Sophie, we're good? Oh, it's recording. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are super excited to be having a Zoom call in the midst of this pandemic with a few different Rhodes Scholars from various different experiences, backgrounds, and hometowns. So this is super exciting for us as Rhodes Scholars and as people who care deeply about this opportunity that we've been given to give back some information and some experiences to you all the viewers today. So we hope we answer some important questions that might be at the top of your head today. And if we don't, no worries, leave them in the comments. We'd be happy to get to them in our next Zoom call. And without further ado, we're just going to get started on introducing ourselves. So if all the Rhodes Scholars currently on the panel are okay to first introduce your name, your Rhodes identifier, and for those people who don't really know what that means, a Rhodes identifier really highlights your place in which you were selected for the Rhodes Scholarship, as well as the college that you are currently located at in Oxford, and then also what you're studying. So if you could just highlight on those three things, that would be awesome. And let's start off with Lian.
Hi everyone, my name is Lian and I am a Rhodes Scholar from Israel. My Rhodes identifier is Israel and St. Anthony's 2018. I'm studying currently here at Oxford for a master's in comparative social policy, and I'll be doing an MPP next year as well.
Awesome. Lamma?
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Lamma Mansour. I'm a Palestinian citizen of Israel, so my identifier is Israel Green Templeton 2019, and I am doing an MPhil in evidence-based social intervention and policy evaluation, which is the longer format of a master's.
Zehra?
Hi everyone, my name is Zehra Nakvi, and I'm from British Columbia. I'm at Green Templeton College from 2018 class, last year's, and I'm doing an MSc in Migration Studies. I did an MSc in Migration Studies last year, and this year I'm doing an MSc in Social Anthropology.
Majd?
Hi everyone, my name is Majd Abdulghani, and I'm a 2019 scholar. My Rhodes identifier is Saudi Arabia and Balliol, so I was selected from Saudi Arabia, and I'm doing a DPhil in oncology.
I'll go quickly. My name is Serene Singh. My Rhodes identifier is Colorado and Christchurch. Colorado is in the United States. And what I'm studying right now, I'm studying the Master's in Public Policy at Oxford right now at the Blavatnik School of Government. And then finally, Tatenda.
Hi guys, my name is Tatenda Maketsi, Zimbabwe and Lineca 2019. Currently I'm doing the Master of Science in African Studies, and I'll be starting the MPP in September this year.
Yay! Awesome. So I think from just our introductions, you can tell how diverse of a group this is and how many different experiences are just within us 6 people. So I hope this is super informative, and we're going to get started with talking about a few really important topics just leading up to the Rhodes, and then kind of highlighting what it's like to be a Rhodes Scholar in Oxford, the experience in Oxford, etc. So let's first start off with the idea of applying for the Rhodes. And a lot of our viewers are really thinking about this right now, and this is on the top of their head. So I wanted to first ask the question to Tatenda: what was the biggest obstacle that you needed to overcome in order to apply for the Rhodes?
Thanks, Erin. I think the biggest obstacle in my case was myself, in the sense that I talked myself out of applying several times, because I felt like I think when I was going through like some of the stuff about the Rhodes Scholarship and going through the website and stuff, and there was some, I remember like reading this quote, like I think it's on Wikipedia, where it says that nobody applies for the Rhodes Scholarship expecting to get it. And then like looking at the trajectory of the Rhodes Scholars from Zimbabwe, many of them were coming from the US, and I was I did all my studies in Zimbabwe. So it sort of like created that divide where I'm like, okay, I think this is not for like Zimbabwean scholars who have been like studying in Zimbabwe. So that was like the biggest obstacle that I had to go through, because it was like really easy to just conclude like anybody who studies in Zimbabwe will not get Rhodes Scholarship, because that's what the trajectory for several years, and it sort of like created, that was the sort of like existing like construction of the Rhodes Scholarship in Zimbabwe. So I had to sort of like rely on a very strong support network, where my friends, we actually had to talk to a few colleagues, ask a few questions, like just a general question like to what extent do you think I deserve to get Rhodes Scholarship, and then just like hear what they have to say about that, and what are some of the strengths that I have to look into myself. And that's actually how I actually just decided to say, you know what, let me just like give it a shot. But besides that, I think the biggest obstacle was myself, just talking myself out of it. And maybe if I'm to give a hint to anybody who is trying to apply and you feel like you don't deserve it, if you don't apply, then you're self-disqualifying. So essentially it means you will not get it. So at least if you apply, you create the 50-50 probability of getting it. And for me, that's the best win you can do for yourself. Just give yourself the benefit of doubt, and no matter how much your background could be like a challenge, just try to say, you know what, let me just give it a best shot, and give it your best shot and see how things go.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I just wanted to see from the panel, who else had that experience where maybe at least some part of your own preconceived biases about who deserves this and who doesn't deserve this was in some way a detriment to you applying, like in some way that was an obstacle. Did anyone else have that experience? You can just even raise your hand, that you yourself were like, not for me. And I think that's really important to highlight, that all of us who are Rhodes Scholars had some type of a worry even before applying, which I think is huge. I wanted to also ask another question here on the topic of applying for the Rhodes Scholarship to Zehra. How was applying for the Rhodes different from applying for another scholarship or another postgraduate opportunity? What was kind of the unique elements of your applying to the Rhodes Scholarship?
I think just the application process, the way it's set up, it's not just about your academics, it's not just about your future plans, it really is about your story. And I think how like the whole process of applying really forced me to sort of sit down and get in touch with myself and look at my experiences, look at what I've done so far and where I want to go. And it was a very holistic experience. And I think that's what's quite different from sort of other things you might apply for specifically. And the other thing is that really drawing upon your networks and like, or your community, because it's such a community effort to like apply, like all the references that you need. And like, as Tatenda mentioned, like even like feeling that you're worthy of like applying, right? Like having people believe in you, have faith in you at a time when you might think, okay, I'm not good enough for this. So I think just like all the references that you need, and it's just a very holistic experience. It's about the communities that you've been a part of. It's about your past, your own story, your personal struggles, and then also sort of fitting that into like a larger kind of narrative of where you're heading, and then fitting like how that fits in with your career aspirations, your academics, and all of those things. So yeah, it's quite a lot.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. And I just wanted to piggyback off both of your points real fast on applying for the Rhodes. And I want to hear the whole panel's views on this as well. I think something that Rhodes Scholars receive a lot, especially in terms of questions, and a lot of these viewers might even be thinking this, is, well, I failed this class at this one point in time. I have this on my record and this doesn't look good. I have this really, really negative thing that happened to me and it sucks. And as a result, I'm not good enough for the Rhodes Scholarship. And I think especially the narrative surrounding each of these three things is something that almost all of us probably faced too, that, well, I have this, so that makes me not perfect. But I think just to everyone, at least in my experience, I wanted to highlight that I think in some way the Rhodes Scholarship focuses on your limitations in a weird way, because I think limitations make us human and they make us who we are, and it's completely normal and natural to have limitations. I think there's no such thing as a cookie cutter Rhodes Scholar, which is honestly a beautiful thing, because I think what in some way the Rhodes Scholarship and the application is looking for is, how do you take those limitations and those things that could be perceived by anyone else as like, oh my gosh, you did this or this happened to you, and then challenge it. Transform it into something that's powerful and impactful and empowering. And I think all of us have something like that in our stories of, this could be seen as awful from everyone else around us, but in some way we've taken that and championed it and made it our own narrative in a really positive way. And I think that's kind of what Tatenda and Zehra were talking about a little bit too, of how are you able to overcome that kind of personal invalidation that we sometimes do. I don't know, does anyone else have any thoughts on application of the Rhodes Scholarship if you haven't talked?
So yeah, actually, like I kind of, what Zehra said especially resonated with me in the sense of trying to like understand and reflect on myself, my values, and to me, applying to the Rhodes was what I wanted more than actually applying to Oxford, if it makes sense. And that was because of that holistic experience before, applying to it, the application process itself, and as well as becoming a Rhodes Scholar and beyond. And I think when you were saying about the bad marks, like I certainly had it. I had one bad mark in my transcript, and I didn't really think they would notice it in the sense of I also had so many other achievements, and I thought, that would compensate for that. And yet in the interview, I was asked, why did you get, a low mark in this specific? Because the rest of my grades were like A+ and whatnot, but there's one class, and I was a bit kind of taken aback when I was asked, because I was like, oh, like, what am I going to say? But I just owned up to it, and I explained why is it that I didn't do well in that. And then I tried to shift it back into explaining the limitation. How can we fix it? Or not necessarily fix it, but overcome it. And, it worked, because I ended up getting it despite having that black dot in my transcript. And that is because, the Rhodes Scholarship focuses not just on academic excellence, but also on us as individuals who are really trying to change the world. And I genuinely appreciate that.
Thank you. Majd, I think you're speaking, but it might be muted. Okay.
Yeah, here. So I think in my case, what I felt was a huge limitation for me is that I didn't feel like a leader in the traditional sense, that I wasn't president of anything. I didn't initiate any clubs when I was in university or during my master's. And what really transformed my opinion on this was actually watching a video of other scholars talking about their experience and their application. And there was one scientist, I haven't come across her. I really wanted to see her when I came to Rhodes House, but I think she might have left. But anyway, one scholar, she said, oh, I'm a scientist. And I was at the interview, I was talking to one of the panelists, and I told him I don't feel like I fit the leadership criteria. And he said to me, well, what do you think a leader in science means? And I think that really made the shift for me. How dedicated am I to my science? How dedicated am I to my research? And how much that inspires other people to be in science and in research. That's what it could mean to be a leader in science. And so that's how I overcame that part.
I just wanted to quickly echo what you're saying. I love that, because I think a lot of students think Rhodes Scholar, government, public service, I need to, like, public service in more of like the public facing light of how many things have I started, where am I president, where am I not? And I think a lot of people have this misconception that you have to be founder of 85 different things. But that's not the case. And I'm really happy that you're here to highlight that too. And I think all of us can echo that too, that leadership is not defined in a single way by the Rhodes Scholarship. And it probably will never be as such, because leaders are people who are making changes in many different disciplines, and leadership in many different disciplines means different things. And that is okay to be proud of and to just completely embrace. So super, super awesome. And I wanted to just also quickly see if Lamma wanted to say anything on that.
Yeah, just to build off on what everybody else was saying, I think that the application process itself is very valuable. Like, we rarely get an opportunity to just pause and think, okay, what have I done and where do I want to go? How have the past experiences shaped me into being the person I am today? And then how am I going to take those experiences and where do I want to go with them? And I think that's such a rare privilege that when we sit down and do actually start working on our application, I think you gain a better understanding of who you are and where you want to go. So even if you don't get the scholarship in the end, I think that the application process is in itself, I found personally to be very, very valuable. And then just on the point of maybe a failure or like a black dot here and there, I think that part of where you can demonstrate leadership is being reflective about those black dots and seeing them and saying, okay, I failed in this particular aspect, but what do I learn about it today? Because as people, we are going to make mistakes. And I think that the Rhodes is looking for people who can make mistakes and then learn from them. So they don't want perfect people, because that doesn't exist. but rather people who can own up to their mistakes and then transform them in a way that would advance them, because they are looking to invest in people and in people's lives. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think we'll just hop on over to our next subject, which is on interviewing for the Rhodes. So now, hopefully, at least to some degree, our viewers are thinking, okay, I'll apply. I'll definitely apply. Maybe I'll get something out of the process. I'll think about myself a little bit more, the future. I'll have to overcome these personal limitations that I've set on myself and these worries that I have internally. So maybe they're at that stage right now. So in terms of interviewing for the Rhodes, I wanted to give the first question to Lian. So Lian, what was your experience in the Rhodes interview? Now this can be positive, negative, but what was kind of your experience of it? Are all the things that everyone told you right before it true? Were they completely false? Just talk to us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, sure. So just kind of as a background, I guess, that was when I applied back in 2017 to become a Rhodes Scholar of 2018. It was only the second time that the Rhodes Scholarship was offered to Israelis. And therefore, I only had 2 scholars to reach out to. So I immediately, the moment I knew that I wanted to apply, I just reached out, and I was really kind of, I guess, happy and very appreciative that Majd, the scholar before me, kind of explained to me a little bit of the process, and that kind of guided me and prepared me for the interview section, I guess. And when I went on to it, I think there are 2 things that I had to keep in mind. And, you know, we touched on it a bit earlier, the whole concept of like, am I worthy to be in there or not? And I think with interviews, I'm not sure how it is in other constituencies, but in Israel, we met the night before as well with the rest of the finalists. And that in itself is quite intimidating, because I remember going at night, I'm from Haifa, but the interview was in Jerusalem. So I was there with my fiance, and we started kind of like talking after it. And I was like, well, there's this person and that person, and oh my God, like they're gonna find a cure for this. I'm really nervous, and the interview is the next day. So imagine that intimidation that you get. And I think for me, my now husband was like, no, like, listen, you're there for a reason. You got to make it to the finalists. Don't come in and get out of there with an imposter syndrome, but instead empowered, and feel and think of those people as a future network, future friendships, people that actually hold the same values that you do, because, you know, you apply to the same thing. And when I did that and I came to the interview itself the next day, I just, you know, wanted to get to know them as people and not think of them as my competitors. And that eased out like a little bit my nervousness. And the interview itself, again, very intimidating. 6 people sitting around the room, you're in the middle looking at everyone, and you're just getting, you know, questions left to right. And I think for me, I'm a public speaker, have been for the past 8 years, so talking to people, being put on a spot is not something that I'm that afraid of, but still in that room I was a bit kind of like on my nerves. And the one thing that helped me was just the thing that I'm talking to my parents' friends or something like that, so kind of take away a little bit of that authority figure from the people that were sitting in front of me and just look at it as an experience. And I was 1 out of 2 people who got called back. And at that point, you can either go you can go one way or the other. One part of me was like, oh my God, I think I blew it. Like, why are they calling me back? I don't think that person was that confident or that good. Why am I being featured with them? But then on the other hand, I was like, well, okay, Lian, this is your second opportunity to actually, you know, get in there and seal the deal, as they say. So that was kind of my interview experience with the Rhodes House.
I'm super glad that you talked about, you know, it not being the most simple thing, even though you're a public speaker, which I think is huge, because people think, okay, well, I'm really set far behind because I don't like public speaking. I don't like, you know, talking this much. Like, my work is my work. This is a little bit more intimidating, but that's important to hear. And it's also really cool, I think, that you talked about your experience being called back, because I think that's another maybe a worry that a lot of people have, especially as finalists, that if I get called back, either I did really badly or I'm at the top, or everyone who didn't get called back is completely out of the running. Like, it's just this whole mind game, I think, in some weird way. So did anyone else have that experience of being called back or having someone else called back in your internal struggle? How did you navigate that? No one else had that? I think that's a testament to how rare this happens. So to everyone watching, it is not a common case where, you know, every single jurisdiction will have 2 people called back or 3 people called back. It's honestly usually for clarification purposes. Maybe the judges feel like they need a quick few more questions with you in order to understand a little bit about yourself, whether or not you're in the top or the bottom or the middle, it doesn't really matter. And I think another really important thing is we all have classmates that had other people called back and they were not in that group, and they are now Rhodes Scholars. So just because you don't get a call back does not mean anything, and it's very easy to play a mind game with yourself, whether you're applying or interviewing or whatever the case might be, whatever the part of the stage you are at for your Rhodes Scholarship journey, you can play a mind game with yourself. But just like Lian said, how are you going to navigate that and empower yourself when it could be a limitation? So that's really important, but super cool experience. Now I wanted to also ask Tatenda, because Tatenda had a similar experience in terms of the interview of just trying to make the most of the experience and take as much as he could from it. And obviously it was intimidating. So how did you navigate that? What was that like?
So for me, it was pretty simple, in the sense that I'm not taking back, like I'm not taking away the fact that the interview, the setup and everything is pretty intimidating. And you know, because it's that one opportunity where you're like, okay, you know what, a yes in this case is going to change a lot of things about myself in a very tremendous way. So that part always makes the interview very intimidating. But in my case, as I said earlier, that I actually had very many doubts that I was going to get the scholarship. So for me, because I knew, I had convinced myself that, you know what, you're not going to get the scholarship, so go and have fun. So when I got into the interview, I was just like really relaxed, and I tried to have as much fun as possible. And I remember I think the best thing about the whole experience was that at the end of the day, when I got the scholarship and I started to reflect back, I realized that perhaps I got the scholarship because I was being myself. I didn't try to be this strong person who always knows which is the best answer, or who knows how to be politically correct all the time or in every question. At times, I remember there were questions when I was asked like for something that is really abstract, and I would tell them like, I really don't know, but I'm willing to tell you like my opinion, which I am ready to admit could be wrong, but it's what I think. So you know, like I think that sort of self-positioning and positionality in the interview sort of like managed to help put me on a better state. And even like I remember like I even managed to sort of like crack a few jokes along the way. I remember like this at the time they asked me like, so for me I was much into debates and student activism and all that, but I didn't do like sports. And then one time when I was in college, when I did sports, I was playing darts. So they asked like, why didn't you play any other sport just for the fun of it? And my answer was like, look at me, I'm a really small person. Which other sport could I possibly play considering I'm this small? If I played rugby, somebody would probably kill me. If I played football, somebody would probably kill me. So I remember at the end of the day, like everybody was laughing. So that sort of like the juggling of emotions and you know like the atmosphere in that manner helped me to sort of like maintain my composure and sort of like be at least like on top of who I am in the interview. So at the end of the day, it was like me being myself in the interview was a really great shot. And then I think I also agree that in my case, I think when we were interviewed, there were like 8 of us, and then 5 were from the US, 4 were from the US, 1 was from UK, and 3 were from Zimbabwe. So it's like talking to everybody. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like, why did they even call me here? Are they trying to humiliate me or what? Because I remember like you're talking to somebody who's like, okay, you know, I just came like from the interview straight from my lab. I'm trying to, you know, like try to create a cure for AIDS. And I'm like, wow. Then what am I creating? You know, like, so it sort of like put me in that bad spot. And that was the day before like the official interview where like just like interacting with each other and stuff. So it's sort of like got me thinking deep again about myself. When I went home, I really had to sit with myself down and start to think deep. Who am I? The same question that I asked myself when I was writing my personal statement and stuff, I started to ask myself those same questions and looking for feedback from the very few people who are within my close network, and just like saying, hey, if somebody asks me this question, what do you think my strengths are? So that I just like have that third person like perspective about like how I am, like my mirror to someone else, you know. So it sort of like helped me to prepare on how to be the best me humanly possible. So when I went for the interview, the outcome was this. Yeah.
I love that. And I think we're going to wrap up the topic on interviewing just so we can go and talk about Oxford a little bit too. But I just wanted to make one quick highlight that both of these people, both of you two have just spoken, as well as I think every single person has highlighted in some way in their answer, which is that idea of like a community and a support group, whether it's one person or a few people back home, but people who kind of remind us who we are when we are most stressed and confused. I think all of us have at least one image in our head of someone who helped us remember that we are awesome and that we're cool and that we have a lot to offer. And just like anyone else who is a finalist, we have our own worth. And so that's huge. Find that support group and find those people who are willing to have your back on that when you doubt yourself the most. I think all of us can say that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for some people who really believed in us. Okay, so let's move on if everyone's okay with that. Does anyone have any burning things to talk about in the interview process or anything? No? We're good? Okay. We're going to talk a little bit now about moving to Oxford. So we're going incrementally. We've gone through the application process. Let's say you were a finalist and, you know, awesome, you won the scholarship. Woo! Now moving to Oxford, which everyone thinks is, okay, I won the scholarship, now we're done. No. The Rhodes Scholarship has just begun is what's really happening. Now, obviously, the moving to Oxford process is very different for all of us, whether it's visa requirements, passports, family obligations, maybe you're married, maybe you're not. Like, there's a lot of different components to the idea of moving from a different country to a different place. So I want to hear a little bit about that experience for you. What was that like? What were the challenges? And just more of a broader overview, and then we'll get into some specific questions. But I guess the first person I wanted to ask this to was Zehra. Can you just tell us a little bit more about like an overview of your experience in moving to Oxford and transitioning?
Yeah, the thing is that you get your Rhodes Scholarship like months before you actually move to Oxford. So like there's this whole transitional period where you're just waiting to like arrive and like figuring out your travel arrangements, making sure you get into your courses. So you still have to apply to, you get your Rhodes, and then you still have to apply to your courses. And then that's also like, can be very like an anxious experience because you're waiting to hear back. So I think that whole process for me was quite anxiety inducing. But it helped to sort of have like, so I was connecting with other people within my constituency who were going through similar things, and that really helped. But finally, when even after I got through it, I didn't really believe it. I felt like, okay, until I like arrive in Oxford, I don't know if this is actually going to happen, if this is really happening, something's going to go wrong. So like, so I think once I finally arrived, I was like, okay, this happened. And it was very overwhelming. And I just felt like immensely grateful. And I think something that I was really scared of was also just feeling like, am I going to fit in? Am I going to find friends? Am I going to feel lonely here? I don't know anyone here. I don't, but instantly like you're made to feel welcome, and like Mary like knows your name, and Mary's our registrar, and there's just, and everyone else is going through similar things, and they're all coming from different contexts and backgrounds, so everyone has like this sort of spirit of like wanting to welcome each other. And like previous years, Rhodes Scholars have like created like a welcome week for incoming scholars, so there's sort of all of that happening, so I think that really helps with the transitioning. Yeah,
I love that. And I wanted to also touch on some of the things that you were talking about, and let's get maybe more specific too with this next question. What has been the best and worst part of moving to Oxford? And so take that in whatever direction you might want to, whether it's specific to the Rhodes community, Oxford, the weather at Oxford, whatever it might be. And I guess to talk about that, I wanted to ask Majd.
I unmuted myself this time. I think there are different aspects. For me, one of the hard parts is that I didn't follow the traditional route, where I didn't go to college housing. So finding an apartment in Oxford was very difficult for me. But the other thing that was really intimidating was that I'm the first scholar from Saudi Arabia. So I knew I would be coming as the first Saudi Arabian to Rhodes House. I didn't have anyone else that I knew, whereas other constituencies, you know, especially the larger ones, they usually come, you know, on a flight together, and they had spent a weekend together before. So they were already forming friendships. In welcome day, I was like, I don't know what is going on. I don't know who to talk to. Everybody's so cool and everybody seems to already know each other. So that was the most difficult part, I think, for me, just trying to find someone to talk to, someone I can identify with. But it went smoothly after that. You know, it's really scary at the beginning, but once you're in it, it's okay. And the best part about moving to Oxford was, I think, meeting all of you. Yeah, I think that's really the best part. And I wouldn't say I love my department. I love my college, but I think meeting all of you was really the best part. I met some really amazing people, you included.
Yeah, and I think that's super important to highlight too, that when we move out to Oxford, I think a lot of people have this idea that there's so many Rhodes Scholars that most of us never see each other. And I think it used to even maybe be that case for a lot of our panelists when we had judges, that when they moved to Oxford, some of them knew each other, some of them had no clue at any point who was the Rhodes Scholar from this jurisdiction at that same year. But I don't think it's been that way for us. And I think that's because of all the different programming and events that Rhodes House has been putting on ever since however long, to make sure that Rhodes Scholars are connected. So all of us on this call know each other. We've all seen each other at Rhodes events and hung out, and we know each other in different capacities, which I think is really beautiful, that the Rhodes Scholars, even though there's so many of us in so many different departments and fields of study and with different experiences in our life, we still have opportunities to really engage and get to know each other, which I think is cool. I think that's cool. You guys are cool. I think on that same topic, we're not really moving on topics, but we're just going to maybe specify it a little bit more, which is the Rhodes community at Oxford specifically. And the first question on this would be, what is your favorite part of the Rhodes community at Oxford thus far? And I wanted to ask Lamma on that.
Oh, that's a good question. I think that one of the best things at Oxford, and especially in the Rhodes community, is how many opportunities there are. So every single night, every single day, there are so many talks happening in the city about everything that you can think of. Whatever you're interested in, you'll find a society that does that, including at Rhodes House. So there are different groups that of people who just gather together, or are passionate about a certain thing, whether that is some kind of a political issue or some kind of a social issue, or even technology, like AI or different things. And I think that's so, it just broadens your horizons in a way that I think you don't get in many other places in the world. But at the same time, that can be quite overwhelming. I can't remember the name of the day, but there's a day that happens in the beginning of the first week, if somebody can help me. No, I think it's like a fair, a big fair that happens in, I haven't been in Oxford for a few months, so I can't remember. But anyway, so there's a huge fair that happens. Freshers Week, thank you.
There we go.
So Freshers Week happens, and it's all of the societies of Oxford, and it's one of the most overwhelming days of the whole year, because there are 10 societies for everything, sports that you've never heard of. So it can be a bit overwhelming, but I think that when you choose what you want to do eventually, and get connected with kind of a group that you feel comfortable with, when you find your community, it can be such a beautiful thing. And I think that at the same time, what we were saying about imposter syndrome before during the interview, I think that once you get to Oxford, that doesn't, if you had it before, that doesn't really leave you. So you still kind of have to overcome it every single day, because Oxford is full of impressive people, the Rhodes community in particular, people who've done all sorts of things, amazing things. But I think, yeah, you just kind of have to really keep working on that feeling of being an imposter, and remembering that we all have kind of different paths to being leaders, and instead of how Majd said, to just talk to people and get to know these amazing people rather than being intimidated and kind of getting secluded.
Yeah, I love that. And I wonder if anyone else had that same experience. Even I think you mentioned Freshers Week, where you walked into, it was like a small room initially, and you're like, oh, this is very underwhelming. There's like 10 societies. And then they took you into another one, and there's like maybe 20. And then they took you into another, and there's like 60. And then they take you to the upper floor, and there's like 6,000. And you're like, how did this happen?
And then people start shouting at you, selling you stuff and giving you free candy. And you're like, I don't want the free candy.
Let me go!
It's like a maze too. Like once you're in, it's really hard to get out. Like you have to like walk all the way to the end.
Gotta commit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. It's definitely the case that it's very overwhelming in a lot of ways that can be seen as, oh my gosh, this is too much, but also like what you both highlighted, that if you're able to really invest in that opportunity, it can be really powerful. You can come up with really strong lifelong friends, societies that you never even thought you'd care about, but become a huge integral part of your identity. Things like that. So super important to highlight. And I think on that same note that we're talking about Freshers Week now in Oxford a little bit more generally, I wanted to ask a question of how did you choose your college? And I think all of us are from different colleges, if I'm right. Is that right? Does anyone remember anyone from the same college here? Okay, so if we all are from different college, what was that? Sorry.
I think someone else here is from Green Templeton, right?
Yeah,
Lamma,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I think both of you guys can piggyback on each other on your experience with Green Templeton. But how did everyone choose their college? Did you really choose it? Did you just kind of just want it to be Harry Potter randomly assorted type style? And I guess I'll start off on that one just because I'm asking the question first. So for Christ Church, I think it was the only college that, at least in the United States growing up, I had any reference to. Obviously, I'd seen Harry Potter and I was obsessed with Harry Potter. And so when I heard about the dining halls and everything like that, I was like, oh, that'd be fun. Now, I honestly don't think I made the most informed decision with my college because it was off of just my random viewings of Christ Church dining halls on television. But I think when you are sent the list of, here are all the different colleges at Oxford, it's a little bit overwhelming. It's one of those things that you're like, how in the world do I decide this? In the United States, at least at the university I went to, colleges were not a thing. Like we didn't have different groups or colleges per se. It was more so what dorm were you going to live in, and that didn't really matter after your freshman year. So I wasn't really used to understanding what the college community could be like, how impactful it would be. Things like that. And I think a lot of different people in different colleges and countries might have that experience just going into it, but I didn't have that. So I think for me, what was helpful is Christ Church was really, really good about helping us pay for a dining ticket that made sense and was affordable. I'm not someone who cooks, and a lot of people who can cook would not need a dining ticket, but I needed a dining ticket. I needed something that would help me get food at night when I needed to eat and would be super affordable, and that was really helpful in Christ Church. In addition to that, I think Christ Church was is both undergraduate and graduate. And I don't know, I think some of your colleges are graduate only, which I think is really interesting, and maybe we can provide that insight on why you decided graduate only. But for me, I was coming out of undergrad and I really wanted to also be amidst people who were undergrads as well as graduate students, just to get even more of a diversity of experiences. So I think those were two of the most important reasons that I said, okay, well, Christ Church sounds like my next home. But what about you all?
Yeah, for me, I chose Green Templeton. I think to kind of base it off, I was so overwhelmed with the other decisions that I had to make and all of the other processes that I didn't think it all the way through. So in the end, I think somebody told me that wherever you'll end up, you'll be fine. And I think that's true. Most people I know are happy with their college choices. But for me, it was important that the college would be egalitarian in its approach. So no high table. Everyone is kind of on the same footing, and Green Templeton is like that. It was also close to my department, so it was also important for me that it would be accessible. And then I think maybe someone who's considering this might also consider so each college kind of has its specifications in terms of topics. So Green Templeton is mostly medicine and business and some social sciences, I would say, generally. So that was also fit my kind of thinking. And it is a graduate college. So I wanted to be more in that environment, I would say, and rather not be with undergrads. I'm not sure why, but that just sounded better, I think, at the time. Yeah.
Awesome.
So to be fair, like I'm actually moving to Green Templeton for my MPP, so it's really interesting to hear. Yeah, no, I in St. Anthony's this year, which to be honest wasn't really my choice, and it wasn't really a Harry Potter choice either. I had put in that I wanted Nuffield at the start, and the reason I had picked that, it was actually because of my supervisor, who I'm really lucky to have her as my supervisor. I didn't know that at the time, but Professor Mary from the Department of Social Policy and Intervention, she's a tutor there, and that's how I wanted, because I knew that would kind of grant me even more access, probably, be it to lectures or seminars that might happen in the college itself. So that's kind of how I based my choice. But personally speaking, I also deal with a chronic illness that I've been dealing with for the past 13 years. And it also affects my mobility. And therefore, I needed to really look into accessibility choices, I guess. And that's where the Rhodes House has really kind of stepped in, and they tried to figure out what would be right for me in terms of colleges that actually have also accessible accommodation. I ended up with St. Anthony's, but truth be told, they actually didn't really have accessible accommodations that are for couples, married couples. So I ended up being in a graduate accommodation. So I'm not as pleased, I guess, personally, from my experience with the college, just because I don't feel a part of it. And you mentioned it earlier, is that community of a college. And I think for Rhodes Scholars, we have 3 different communities. It's like Oxford, our department, then there's the Rhodes House, and then there's the college itself. So I kind of felt more actually in the Rhodes and the department rather than the college. And I really hope for that to change, with Green Templeton, and it's kind of experience more the college. But it was also very important for me to give myself a bit of kind of permission to not feel like I had to do it all and I had to be a part of everything, because then we're just going to reach a burnout. So I kind of told myself, you know what, focus this year on these 2 communities mainly, and then next year, because that's the really good part about Rhodes House, it gives you more than just 1 year at Oxford. So therefore I was like, okay, next year I'll be a bit more within the college community as well.
Yeah, super, super helpful insight. And I think also your point on accessibility and accommodation, I think that's something that Oxford in general, I think people, when they get there, they think, okay, I'll be fine, but the college will help me. But even when I look at Christchurch and I look at how there's only stairs everywhere, and that there's no such thing as an elevator in any of Christchurch, it's important to consider, and it's important to think about, and a resource like the Rhodes House to help us, understand, okay, here are some things that are really important, here are some things that I don't care as much about, whatever, where might be best is super critical, because they have that information, that knowledge, whereas most of us have not been to every single college, and we wouldn't know that just off the top of our heads. So yeah, and I hope your next year is like that. Anyone else wanted to talk on their college and how they selected?
I think I'm kind of like Lian, where I don't feel particularly involved in my college. I feel like I belong to it. I feel like it's mine, my college, but I don't live in college accommodation. I'm not actually involved with anyone with the college community that much. I don't know why I feel like a sense of belonging to it, to be honest, but I just somehow I do. And the reason I selected it is I cared that it would help me grow my network a lot. And so Balliol is a really old college, so I knew that part would be covered. I cared about the facilities that they offered. So they had gyms and squash courts and stuff like that, which I never ended up using because I live far away from the college. But that's sort of what went into it. But I know that as a Muslim, I would normally have cared a lot about the food as well, because I would want a college that provides halal food. And Balliol actually doesn't. So if you're thinking about a college to choose, that's something also to keep in mind.
Really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. And then I think there's one more, Tatenda, on selection.
Yeah. So personally, I think when I was selecting, I didn't like put much thought into the issue of colleges, because largely I didn't understand it. Even though a lot of people tried to explain it, I still didn't understand it like at all. So I ended up just like selecting, was like, okay, what is it that I really need? And I personally, I just needed a gym that I could like access like 24/7. And Lineker has a gym that is open 24/7. So basically, that's how I settled. And then it's really close to Rhodes' house, like 4 minutes walk to Rhodes' house. So it ended up becoming like really convenient to say, okay, you know what, it's really close to like all the like it's really close to a few of the shops that I would really need. For example, like food outlets and all that. So I was like, oh, so it's really convenient. I didn't really like put much thought into it, but when I came here, I actually like found out that it's actually like a really great college in terms of like the network and stuff, but financially it's not. So if you are doing, for example, somebody who is doing a DPhil and you might feel like you need extra funding, for example, for your research and stuff like that, it's something that you should actually consider. Like the extent to which your college can support you financially is also going to be really critical. But for somebody who was doing a master's like myself, I wasn't going to be affected in any way because my department was going to cater for like it was going to give me a grant to do like my field work. So it was just like my college, Rhodes house, and stuff like that. Then I was really basically covered. So the impact would really be like minimal, like to say the least. But for somebody who is doing a DPhil, if you do not have like enough funding, or if like you feel like your program needs that extra funding, you might actually want to consider a college that is going to help you financially, because it would at the end of the day be like a straining factor, which wouldn't be a very good idea. So it's actually like something that you could also consider if you're looking into colleges.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think a lot of times I heard when I was applying that colleges don't matter. It's okay, like whichever college you end up with, it's okay. I think that can be the case for some people, depending on like where you're living, if you're not necessarily living in college or however, which I think it depends. Like, I guess, Lian, in your case, it was really important. So I think for some people, and also for funding reasons. For me, I was living in college accommodation, and I also went with Green Templeton because it was really important for me to be in a college where I felt that it was a very diverse and inclusive community and like very international. And that's what I thought Green Templeton, and I also like reached out to like former Oxford students or graduates and asked them like what are like, because I think that really helps knowing like what these colleges are like, because it's really hard to get a sense of them if you're just looking online. And then I kind of narrowed down between Green Templeton and St. Anthony's because they were sort of grad colleges and a lot more international and inclusive and things. So I think that was what was really important to me, and I'm really happy with what I end up with. Yeah.
Can I just add real quick, before I came to Oxford, I somehow, with all the information, the bit that flew over my head was that you're meant to stay in your college throughout your degree. Okay, somehow I didn't know that until I got here. You can change, but it's not recommended. So something to keep in mind.
Yes, that's super important. And I really like the conversation that we've just had around colleges specifically too, because I think it really showcases the diversity of what matters and prioritization, because I think all of us had different things that were important to us. And if everyone went for colleges based on the exact same things, I think there'd be certain colleges that everyone was at. But the reason why that's not the case, and the reason why ranks honestly don't always show exactly what is a college experience for a person, is because priorities matter. And so if your priority is food, is your priority, the academics, is it the distance to Rhodes House? Is it the distance that you would need to walk on a day? Is it the accommodations that are accessible and available? Is it the marriage accommodations that might be available? Things like that. I know Tatenda mentioned gym. That's huge too for a lot of people. And maybe library. The hours of the library are different for different colleges. So really focusing in on what matters to you, to what degree does it matter, and then I think narrowing down colleges is a huge benefit for every single individual scholar as they're applying. Okay, I think let's keep going on to something a little bit, really, actually, I think it's really fun. But I want to hear about your favorite memory thus far with your Rhodes journey. It could be right at the beginning of you applying for it. It could be right now, today, on the Zoom call, who knows. But tell me about your favorite experience with your Rhodes Scholarship journey. And I think we're going to keep this open, but I think let's have like 2 people respond to this one, and then we'll move on to the next question. Go for it. Tatenda, I think you're muted.
So if you don't want to talk, I will talk. Don't worry.
Go for it.
For me, like I think in my case, the Rhodes experience is a bit critical because when I came here, I was the last person to come because I had like a few visa issues. So I think like for me, the importance of like the Rhodes community was a bit more defined, including like, so it sort of like shaped how the experience was going to be generally. And so when I got here, I think I made like a very supportive group. I actually started to realize that, you know what, like it's really cool to be like a Rhodes scholar. Because when I got here, everybody was looking out for me, including people that I didn't know who already knew that I was going to come. When I arrived, everybody was waiting for me. So it was like really, really, I feel like, wow, how is this even possible? And so I think that shaped the whole like canvas of my experiences, because I think the people that I met the first day ended up being like some of the people that I talked to like often. And so I think for me, it's like I don't have like this one event where I say, okay, this is the best experience. But I think all my like Oxford best experiences are attached to Rhodes Scholars and Rhodes House, including like our Christmas dinner where Serene made me carry her, and she hasn't paid me yet. Yeah.
We'll have to show the photo. Does anyone else have any other memories of their Rhodes journey?
I think one memory that definitely strikes is, because it's quite recent as well, is how the Rhodes community and the scholars and the Rhodes House itself has been reacting with COVID-19 and, the pandemic, and how to ensure that whether it's scholars who are still here in Oxford, like myself and Majd, who have seen in a couple of coffee chats, how they're basically forward thinking and future proofing as well, for scholars to continue that connections and having that sense of community. And I completely agree with you, Tatenda. It's like the community, the scholars, that really kind of, I guess maximizes our experiences here in Oxford. So for me, with my own personal health issues, I wasn't as kind of, I guess, present right at the start, especially because I was recovering from a surgery in the first term. So having the ability to still be able to connect with scholars from afar, from here, and know that there is a place that I can call home when I'm here in Oxford, and even after I finish my studies, it's a valuable, I guess, experience for myself, and just something to always treasure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think both of those are super insightful. And I wanted to hear, at least from the three of you who didn't have a chance to say your memories, is there a single word maybe that you could kind of select that would encapsulate your entire Rhodes journey so far, whatever that word might be? If we could just put out a word out there. And I'm going to think of one too.
Surprising?
Surprising, yeah, okay.
I have two words, sorry.
Go for it, go for it.
Vulnerable conversations. Yeah.
And one more? Lamma?
Oh, sorry. I think mine would be challenging. And it's negative and positive connotation.
Yeah. I think similar to that one, I think mine would be reflective. I think only after being a Rhodes Scholar and living in a new country and being amongst so many different brilliant people all the time have I really started to think, okay, how do all my dots really connect in a weird way, and just being reflective of the opportunities we've been given. So let's see. I guess we're about to finish off. So this is one of the last questions. So bring your A game, whatever it might be that you really wanted to address and talk about. But what are your future plans with Rhodes and the Rhodes Scholarship, whether you're in your next year or you're graduating from Oxford soon? And then alongside that, what has surprised you about this experience so far? So you can answer either one or just tag on one of them a little bit more than the other, totally fine. But one of them is your future plans with the Rhodes Scholarship. What are you going to do with it? Or are you going to stay at Oxford? And then what has surprised you in your journey thus far? So let's actually start this one off with Lamma.
Yeah, so my immediate plans are to just continue with my MPhil for next year, which involves some field work. So I might be traveling home to do some interviews and so on. And in reality, I don't know what happens ahead, which is it's a bit daunting to say to Rhodes Scholars, because sometimes you talk to people and they know exactly where they're going to be in 10 years. But then I think something like COVID-19 happening shows us that sometimes you plan and then things do not go accordingly. So I'm taking it one day at a time and just kind of seeing where it takes me. And then for the second part, I think what surprised me the most is just how much in common we have. The community is so diverse, but at the same time, the scholars have so much in common in terms of vulnerabilities, challenges, what things we enjoy. We go and see shows together, we go and watch movies together, we go and do so many other things, have coffee chats. And I think that just kind of shows you that no matter where you are from in the world and what your experiences are, there's just kind of like a basic level where almost everyone can connect. And that has been pleasantly surprising, I think, during my Rhodes experience.
Thank you. Majd?
I think for the future, I'm doing a DPhil, so that's probably going to be another 3 years in Oxford. So I'm glad. I'm really glad I get to enjoy Oxford for a while. And then after that, I know I want to go home, maybe be in academia, maybe not. We'll see, I think, where we go from there. But yeah.
Awesome. Zehra?
So these are two questions, right? Yeah, I think one of the things I found most surprising was, well, like coming in, like, you know, you have this sense of feeling like, I don't know if I deserve this, or I don't know if I identify as like a Rhodes Scholar, or, you know, like when you're applying for it. But I think when I arrived here, I was just really touched by the kind of sense of belonging I was able to find here. And also like how international and diverse my community has become and my friendships are. And like I have friends from like all over the world thanks to like this opportunity and thanks to the Rhodes community. So I think that was really surprising and wonderful. As for the future, I think, yeah, there's often the sense that I think a lot of Rhodes Scholars maybe have everything figured out and like fancy jobs lined up and everything all set. But like, yeah, there is definitely, I'm finishing the second year, so I'm finishing my time here in Oxford. And there is a lot of uncertainty, but I think I'm also just really grateful that I've had this time and like so much has been invested in me. And I think what I want to think about is sort of how I can give back and how I can serve, and also having the courage to, so I'm a writer, and having the courage to sort of continue with my creative pursuits, even if it means I'm not necessarily attached to a fancy institution. And I think that can be really scary for some of us. We've sort of gotten to this point, but like I think to be able to step back from it and be like, okay, I'm going to do this thing that doesn't look so glamorous from the outside, but it's something I'm really passionate about and I want to do. So that's been something I've been figuring out. And yeah.
Tatenda?
So for me, what surprised me the most was the community, not just like us as Rhodes Scholars, but even like the Rhodes Trust stuff. Because I remember like I made friends with almost everyone that I could find. I'm a really talkative person, so I just like managed to find my way into many of the offices. So at the end of the day, you find that the support that I get from the staff, from the students, from the porters. I remember I even was invited by Bob for lunch. Bob and Don were like he's like our chief porter, and they invited me for lunch, and you know it was like really a heartwarming experience, which I really didn't expect. And then in terms of my plans, I've always wanted to do the MPP here at Oxford, so it's something that I'm really looking forward to, like starting in September. And I just like want to make use of the whole experience. And of course, I'll be nagging Serene along the way because she's already done it. So I just like, but I've always wanted to do like the Master of Public Policy. I actually wanted to do it this year, like starting 2019, but I couldn't because it was not recommended due to the fact that it's really like an intense experience. So like that's why I had to sort of like wait up on it and then like do it as a second program. So I'm just like looking forward to the experience, largely because I've always wanted to live a life that benefits the next person, and I feel like the Master of Public Policy sort of like sets the right precedence in terms of like pursuing those goals in my life. So basically, that's what I'm going to focus on for the meantime.
Thank you. Let's see, Lian?
Yeah, I guess before I even give my answer, I'll jump with Tatenda, obviously, because I'm going to be doing the MPP too. So maybe we can even create a WhatsApp group and get some. Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, advice and whatnot is always welcomed. I think for me, I was kind of a bit prepared with the MSc in comparative social policy because we really dive deep with the theories of policy making. And now I get to actually get a bit more of like practical experience that hopefully I'll get to put in place with my future kind of goals. And one of them is actually, I'm a very proud Haifa citizen and I love my hometown. And one thing that I certainly see myself trying to accomplish is actually running for office there and you know, putting it in my kind of, it's in the back burner at the moment, but becoming a mayor of Haifa as an Arab Israeli citizen and showing that Arabs are an integral part of the society within Israel and deserve a place at the decision-making table. So that's kind of one future goal that I have, but to resonate with the rest that was said, even with Zehra and you know, Lamma and Majd, it's like, what do you know, that pressure that's on you throughout your entire experience in Oxford is like, what am I doing next? Because I've reached this, like, how can I top it? And I think for me, one of the things that I really keep myself kind of reminded of is I'm a person with a lot of, I guess I call myself a multi-passionate person, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I love making candles and soaps and tea blends, and I love that part. But I also like to try and impact and support Arab women in Israel, for example, to achieve financial independence. So I try to combine a lot of the things. And one part where it's like academia, I try to like use my startups as a way to like take the profits and actually create a fund for kind of academic scholarships for Arab women. So I think for me, the one thing that I've learned from being here at the Rhodes House is that kind of like, you know, believe in your dream. You don't need to be, you know, having a big goal once you're done with your degree, because it is the investment in the individual and the belief that every single one of us is going to change the world somehow. And I think one of the things that definitely surprised me has been the unwavering support of the Rhodes House. And that is something that we are all, as Rhodes Scholars, so privileged to actually have in Oxford, which is a place that is so competitive, that is so, you know, overwhelming oftentimes, to just have that place where, you know, you can be yourself and that you are there looked at as all equals. So, yeah.
I love that. This was great, everyone. And I just want to quickly wrap up too, just so anyone who's watching this and maybe joined it.
What surprised you? I want to know.
Oh, me? Thanks, Majd. Let's see. I think something that has surprised me is similar to a lot of what has already been said, but the idea that the idea that I'd be able to connect in so many deeper ways with people who have very, very different experiences than me. I think especially because so much of my life has been in Colorado, which is not a very diverse place. And I was the only Sikh, for instance, in my entire high school. And that it's just been very normal for me to be surrounded with people like that. And then to go to a place where a lot of people had similar difficulties and struggles and limitations and exciting, you know, ideas about the future and passions that I had, I was like, oh, wait a second, like this is insane that we all have so many different backgrounds and ways of viewing the world, and yet we can come together in really, really not surface level ways, but really deep ways and actually build meaningful connections. I think it's insane because I come back home and people are like, how was your time at Oxford? And it's not like, oh, I made a few friends. It's like these are people that I want for the rest of my life in my life. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, you knew us for 6 years and it took us 6 years to get to that point. I'm like, no, you don't understand. But I think the people have inspired me and empowered me in a lot of different ways. And I wasn't expecting to be as moved coming back home as I feel like I am. And that's just a testament to how great so many of the people that we've all been blessed with are. Now, I guess to finalize this, so this was awesome. We were at almost exactly an hour, I think. Sophie might tell me I was completely wrong on that. But just to end and wrap up, this is our initial launch to a larger series that we are hoping to do among scholars, which is called Road to the Rhodes. And the idea is, how did we get to where we are today? What are some insight we can give to people who are in our shoes and we wish we had access to when we were applying for the Rhodes Scholarship? And what are just some fun tidbits that we can give to help myth bust, challenge stereotypes, help inform a little bit more, and to help make the Rhodes Scholarship more accessible to all the brilliant minds that are out there and might be thinking that they're not good enough for an opportunity like this. So please, if you're interested in more sessions like this and more ideas, more questions, whatever it might be, do follow us at Road to the Rhodes and get in contact with the Rhodes Trust and Rhodes House for us to have more awesome engagements like this with more brilliant scholars. And I don't know if anyone has anything last to say, but if not, we can just do jazz hands and call it good. Jazz hands, is that good enough? Okay, jazz hands, bye!